On the universal mobility of individuality by means of natural entanglement, the line hypothesis, life instantiated by natural entanglement, written by Anthony A. Lang, narrated by Derek W. Shetterly. Chapter 1, The Line Scenario, a Thought Experiment, What Darwin Couldn't Have Known. Earth is gone. Complements of some natural occurrence, you name it. Perhaps a primordial black hole or giant rogue planet that happens to be passing through this solar system, which sends the Earth into direct collision with Jupiter. Or perhaps there is an immense solar flare which perturbs Earth's orbit, sending our magnificent crucible for life careening into the sun. Result, all that you and I and your pet otter were, every cell and every DNA molecule, every atom that was on or in the Earth, is now ionized nuclear fuel within the sun. The Darwinian evolved chemistry and biology that many fall back upon to describe life on Earth, particularly human life, has ceased to exist in this solar system, along with its thermodynamically described chemistry and biological processes once used to describe the entirety of Earth's ecosystem. Additionally, imagine, if you will, that there is life elsewhere in this universe. Let us imagine there exists at least one other evolved ecosystem. Let's call it Eco 2, capable of hosting Darwinian life. Different from Earth, but governed by the same laws of physics and biology and thermodynamic processes that manifested Earth's ecology. This planet, orbiting a viable star, may be located anywhere in this universe, since the laws of physics are expected to be consistently applied throughout. Also, for this anecdote, let us say that this other bastion of life is some 10 billion light-years from Earth's sun, a distance so vast it would take much longer than the age of the Big Bang to relativistically travel that distance, assuming, of course, there were any classically defined remnants of one's biology left to make the journey. The question becomes, could you or I or any individual formerly hosted by Earth's ecology ever find oneself a part of Eco 2's ecology? Is the nature of life in this universe such that one could, at some point, find oneself naturally born to Eco 2 in the form of a species indigenous, present or future, to Eco 2, just as we were born on Earth to species indigenous to Earth's ecology? If one adheres solely to the classically understood, thermodynamically described, relativistically constrained mechanisms to explain life writ large, then you are forced to say no. And in so doing, you would necessarily be Earth and human-centric, as one discounts the rest of the cosmos. Because, in nature, what is possible here is necessarily possible elsewhere. Ergo, if you can live here, you can live anywhere. And yet, clearly, some aspect of what biologically, thermodynamically, chemically defined one's singular existence on Earth must relativistically, below the speed of light, travel to bridge the unbridgeable distance between your last physical location, Earth's solar system, and Eco 2's. Naturally invasive scenarios such as this don't reveal questions posed by individuals, but questions posed by nature. Such scenarios essentially ask, how could it be otherwise? Such questions reveal their own answers to any species sufficiently developed to comprehend and honestly confront them. The point of this scenario is the inescapable conclusion that each individualized instance of life must involve a non-classical, non-local, relativistically unconstrained, scientifically describable, naturally recurring component. This individualizing phenomenon must exist separately and distinctly from any local physical form, and must be definable by some discretely quantifiable property of nature with degrees of freedom much greater than that of matter. Such a mechanism may also not be indigenous to this universe, but instead is native to the underlying Hilbert space, or metaverse, if you will. This need for non-locality is necessary to instantiate individuality, not just on Earth while it exists and is viable, but also within the systems and galaxies of this vast Higgs-constrained universe, and throughout nature. The only life that has ever existed on Earth is the living cell, in all of its forms. The aspect of being and individuality had by a single living cell is that which defines all life. No more and no less is required. This aspect, which instantiates the first-person being of a single cell as a living individual every bit as alive as any multicellular creature, is the position of view, or POV. All of the skills and talents that tend to distract from this fact are only emergent features of the host form. Beneath it all is one's POV. In this universe, there isn't one implementation of life for mammalian forms and another for insects and yet another for vegetation or microbial forms of life. Nature is an efficient system of cause and effect, and life is one holistic effect. It isn't my intention to change anyone's mind on this topic. Rather, to expose open-minded listeners to a new and practical way of thinking about a very old, perhaps the most personal of all ideas known to humankind. The recognition of a unique and scientifically plausible description of how nature governs not only species, but the individual, you. There is a very good chance, as is often the case with such invasive ideas about nature, that I and everyone who listens to this volume would be long gone before either the capability or the courage to prove or disprove the line hypothesis is achieved. However, every first step is worth taking. The natural processes that implement life are the same for the cell as it is for the bacteria, as it is for a fruit fly, as for a human being. It is folly for us to think we could only experience life in this very temporary, randomly emerged bipedal primate form. Further, your cells and molecules come and go continuously over the course of your lifetime. Nonetheless, you remain you. Then there are the other trillions of living individuals in millions of different forms all around us, coming into being and going out of life continuously. I realized that the only form we need consider in this regard is the single living cell. The answers that are true for the cell are the answers that apply to all life. Furthermore, you and I and your pet octopus and every living cell are instances of life, each a temporary instantiation of some natural, empirically definable phenomena of nature. This instantiating phenomenon must have the relativistically unconstrained reach to establish individual life, or you, biological or perhaps otherwise, on any planet orbiting any star, or indeed in any viable environment in the cosmos, or in existence where viable hosts may emerge. It is a tragic mistake to feel that this describes something that could not possibly be natural, but must be supernatural. While, as usual, nature's genius is a practical and ubiquitous, even if a bit unfamiliar implementation. There is a phenomenon known to science for some time that meets all of these requirements: quantum entanglement, or QE. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Today we play with it in the lab as a mere tech curiosity. It is the most likely candidate for the life force. Life is individuality, and despite their unfamiliar properties are not mystical or supernatural implementations, but are necessarily common, empirical, tangible or not, implementations of nature that may ultimately be tested, measured, predicted, effected, and manipulated, as are all natural phenomenon. Oddly, humankind, despite many attempts, some well-intentioned, some not so much, has not been able to reconcile and accurately describe what is a living being. How is one implemented in this universe and throughout nature? In this writing, I will begin to do exactly that. It is my hope that those that listen to this volume will openly consider the more specific predictions it offers, but would also become enlightened, excited, and motivated by the breathtaking reality of life and being alive it describes. A view which, until now, has been relegated to the mysticism of religious narratives and a few implausible, over-extrapolated scientific assumptions widely accepted today. A view of a phenomenon, the existence for which we, as living beings, are each in possession of only one exhibit of empirical evidence, oneself. As René Descartes discovered, you are the only exhibit of evidence for the existence of individual life that can be presented to you. All others are at best an assumption, an extrapolation of life. Individuality and being is a natural implementation that is without question constructed, maintained, and mediated by natural forces. Forces either known or at present unrealized or otherwise misinterpreted. The time is long overdue for us to intelligently answer the question, what is a living being? What am I? The answer, if only a plausible one, could change the world, eventually.